Well, everybody, it's Merlin here, and I'm on my lunch break, which is actually more like dinner for most people. But I've decided that I'm going to try an experiment. I'm going to see if I can actually create a series of blogs, just kind of based on my random thoughts during my lunch breaks, just to kind of keep myself from getting too bored, and just getting some videos out for the channel. Now, admittedly, these will be a little more raw, but maybe I'll go in and add some photos later. We'll see. Just if something comes to mind, I'm going to kind of discuss it a little bit. One thing I've been wanting to talk about for a while has actually just been my thoughts and feelings on just superheroes and film in general, because that's kind of like one of the big pivotal areas that our cinema industry in the United States, and I think worldwide, that really cinema has just kind of gone as a whole, because superheroes are substantial properties now. It's kind of funny because I've always felt that they were. I mean, superheroes used to be, comic books in general used to be much more of a niche thing back in the day, but really comics have always had their place and their influence, and they've actually, I think, only gotten more popular as the decades have gone on. And now that they have gotten into the days, I think one of the big reasons why superhero films have become so popular in the last, I'd say 20 years, is primarily because of technology. Because I think that there are a lot of people out there that obviously liked these superheroes, but even in cartoons, beyond the comics, you couldn't really show it. I mean, everybody wants to see their favorite superheroes come to life. And for people that say, okay, I don't want to watch the comic, I don't want to read the comic or watch the cartoon because they associate animation with children, well, there you go. You actually have a way to actually get it out to extend it to a larger audience, so more people can appreciate it and say, oh wow, that's pretty cool. So yeah, and now look at it now. I mean, superheroes are really the most popular type of film. Pretty much have been for the past 10 years, especially the last 5 years. I mean, ever since Iron Man and The Dark Knight came out in 2008, it just seems like they're the highest grossing movies. They're all usually critically acclaimed, and people are always talking about them. They're the most excited ones. And by and large, I mean, not just superhero movies, I think just franchises in general, adapting young adult novels and old fantasy stories and science fiction epics and continuing franchises like Star Trek, Star Wars. I think it really all helped to reinvigorate the big franchise as a whole. Unfortunately, I do think that this means that individual films that are a little more traditional kind of suffer, and I do think that superhero films are getting to the point where it's a little ridiculous now. As it is right now, they're pumping them out almost constantly every year, and I think that honestly the quality has suffered, even from Marvel. I think the last couple movies have been good. Winter Soldier wasn't bad. Guardians of the Galaxy, of course, is amazing, but they've had issues. Iron Man 3 had a lot of problems. Dark World had a lot of problems, but it's been more mixed. But I'm still excited. I'm still happy, because growing up I was always, of course, a big fan of comics, especially the superhero comics, and it's really good to get to see Spider-Man and Batman, Superman, all my favorites, and even some more obscure ones finally get their limelight now. And I'm hoping, now that I'm more of a DC fan, that they'll actually get more of the DC films underway, and they won't be terrible. But it's been a really troubled history so far, so we'll see. But that's basically my intro. I guess I'm a little a little off topic here. You could say what I really wanted to talk about specifically was I wanted to talk about individual superhero films. And for the first discussion, I actually wanted to talk about Daredevil. Now, that's the 2003 film with Ben Affleck starring Matt Murdock, a.k.a. Daredevil. You had Jennifer Garner was playing Elektra. You had Colin Farrell as Bullseye, and you had Michael Clark Duncan as the Kingpin. Now, you also had Jon Favreau as Foggy Foswell, for those people that really want to know. And Kevin Smith and Frank Miller make minor appearances. Wow. See, I remember that movie pretty well. And this was one I think is kind of relevant, because with Ben Affleck taking the helm in the near future to be the new Batman, and we're still waiting to see what kind of performance he's going to give. The initial backlash, I even did a video out on my channel where I was like, oh God, what? And everybody, literally, in the weeks that followed, there was a major backlash. Not even just comic book fans. A lot of people were like, really? Ben Affleck as the next Batman? And I will admit, I think people are still... It's kind of like the same mistake with Spider-Man. They rebooted it a little too soon, I think. But obviously, it's a financial decision. Warner Brothers just wants to capitalize on the popularity of superheroes right now. So they might have possibly jumped the gun a little bit. People are still reeling about The Dark Knight. They like the Christopher Nolan movies. They like Christian Bale's Batman. I have mixed feelings about him, but different topic for a different video. Really, the thing is, though, they chose Ben Affleck. There was a big backlash, but there actually were a lot of people that supported him. And as time has gone by, more and more people have warmed up to the idea because they've thought about it, and I'm actually one of them. I'm actually pretty cool with Ben Affleck as Batman now. I'm actually not worried. I think he'll make a great Bruce Wayne. I think he'll make a pretty good Batman. I think from the shots we've seen from the photographs, I think he looks pretty cool. So I think potentially, yeah, Ben Affleck could be good. But there were people that did believe that he would be doing badly, and I think that it's hard to say, of course, but I feel like the more we learned about the Justice League movie, Superman versus Batman, really, but it's basically the Justice League movie. The more we learn about it, the more we find Ben Affleck's the least of our worries. He's probably going to be the one of the least things wrong with the movie. So you take that into account, I suppose. But it's really fascinating because I think one reason people were worried, though, they thought about it because you have to take into account, okay, Ben Affleck, he loves comic books, he's a big fan of them, and he was worked with Kevin Smith before. He doesn't want to betray the fans. He wants to do a good job. He's also a decent actor, and in the last couple of years, he's got a lot more authority because of movies like Argo. He's shown that he knows good storytelling. He's had some, massive directing accommodations. He's won some awards, and that the last couple of years have kind of, realized, all right, Ben Affleck's got some skills. Is he going to be the best Batman? I don't know, but at least he's more competent than people might have thought, 10, 15 years ago. However, I think one reason why a lot of people had reservations, and why some people upon reflection might have had less reservations, was because of Daredevil. I'm finally getting into it. Now, the 2003 Daredevil movie is a movie that there was a director's cut that was not really released originally, so that does fix some things. I will talk about the original cut because that's the one most people saw. Now, I am a big fan of Daredevil. Daredevil is one of my favorite superheroes. He's star of my favorite graphic novel of all time, Guardian Devil. Really a great character. I know some people think he's kind of a mix of Spider-Man and Batman. I don't really see that as a negative, but I really like Daredevil. I like how tortured he is. I like his powers. I think the fact that he's blind but he can do all kinds of fantastic things is pretty awesome. That he can stand among the greats like Wolverine and Spider-Man. And he also is grittier. He fights more low-level crime stuff. He goes up against the Kingpin, who is one of the most dangerous villains in all of Marvel. So give Daredevil that. And he fights ninjas. I mean, the guy has a very interesting story. Like a lot of characters, he has the potential to be susceptible to bad writing, but that's neither here nor there. The point is, I like the character. I think he's very good, and I actually think this movie, even though it is divisive and it has gotten a lot of flack, I think more people are beginning to realize it did have some positive attributes, and I'm one of the supporters. I can admit it is not perfect by any means. Definitely has some issues. Not just in terms of plot and direction, but just in terms of the character's adaptation, of course. Maybe some questionable choices, I don't know. But I think that this movie is ironically the thing that, even though people were originally hating on Ben Affleck for, I think it's one of the few things that actually gives people hope, because for all the issues that Daredevil had, it was kind of corny, it was really kind of a dimly lit picture. Everything was darkly tinted. It was trying too hard. Some of the dialogue was pretty questionable. The romance between Elektra and Daredevil was not that great, not that well defined. Some of the character motivations and actions were stupid. They just kind of defied all logic, whatever. But the point is, though, one of the best things about the movie was Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck was actually a pretty good Daredevil. Now, one thing I've always wondered is, Ben Affleck's a big friend, with Matt Damon, and so is Kevin Smith, and I was thinking, Matt Murdock is a blonde guy. He looks more like Matt Damon, honestly. He really does. He looks very comparable to Matt Damon in most drawings you've seen of him, most versions of the character. So why'd you pick Ben Affleck? I feel like Ben Affleck just wanted to do it more, but he actually showed he had some range there. He wasn't terrible. I mean, yeah, some of the dialogue was a bit cheesy, and, the movie was stupid in some areas, absolutely, but in terms of his performance, it wasn't that bad. I think he did a pretty good job, all things considered. And I think that the stunt work was decent. I think that his costume looked pretty cool. I think that some of the other casting choices were decent. Like they had, actually, Ben Urich was played by Joe Pantoliano. Cool minor role. Like I said, I think Jon Favreau, you can't go wrong with. He was funny. Really, Michael Clarke Duncan, I feel it's, I feel like people might have thrown hissy fits. I honestly don't know. I haven't heard much, but I had to have thought that somebody back in the day was probably thinking, oh man, they made the Kingpin black. First of all, so what? I mean, I think that you shouldn't get too hung up on race or anything. He was the Kingpin, and Michael Clarke Duncan loved the character growing up and played him well. It makes sense, It worked for the character. I thought he did a great job. He was great. I think one of the positive things people liked about this movie for most people was Colin Farrell as Bullseye. He does do a good job playing Bullseye, but he was really annoying. I didn't particularly like him, but I think that might have just been because he was trying to be over the top and have fun. And I'm not going to say it doesn't work for the movie, but I guess I've always found Bullseye to be kind of scary, and Colin Farrell wasn't scary as all as Bullseye. But still, despite that, I thought he was okay. My biggest problem with Daredevil, actually, and no offense to her, Jennifer Garner, I think she was probably one of the worst miscasts. I think she was worse than Kirsten Dunst's Mary Jane. I mean, Jennifer Garner, okay, Elektra is supposed to be like this Mediterranean Greek woman, who's like this mysterious assassin. And he picked Jennifer Garner, who both by her looks and her typical acting abilities plays the girl next door. A very Caucasian girl next door. That is not Elektra at all. I also thought her performance wasn't too great in the movie overall. I'm not going to say it was horrible. There have been far worse performances and miscasts, but you could have gotten somebody who would have looked and acted the part better, I think. I honestly think so. That was my biggest issue with it. Daredevil definitely had some issues, but if you have seen the movie and you didn't like it, I would recommend giving the director's cut a try, because they actually did connect the dots, and there are less leaps in the logic of the plot. Like, there are some points where there's this whole basic rape investigation that ties everything together a little bit. It's kind of a subplot. It's basically taken out of the original movie, but it's actually pretty decent. I think it helps to keep the story a little more fluid, make it seem a little less clunky. Yeah, I've only got a couple minutes left here before I got to go back. Really, just wrapping up, I think that Daredevil is a pretty decent movie. Perhaps it's a guilty pleasure. It's kind of one of those things, I haven't seen it in a while, so I can't judge it super clearly. I think I might go back and go into a little more detail with a lot of these films. I'd like to kind of focus on them individually, but yeah, let me know what you guys thought about Daredevil, what you thought about Ben Affleck in it, and just the things you liked or disliked about the movie, and how you feel that might have affected your thoughts about the upcoming Superman versus Batman, really. But, I personally think that Ben Affleck might be a decent Batman. It's like one of the things I'm not that worried about, like I said, and I think it's partially because of Daredevil. I found Daredevil to be a rather enjoyable movie. I think it wasn't one you're supposed to take too seriously, and I think it did have some really good casting, and Ben Affleck did do a pretty good job as the lead role. Probably should have been Matt Damon, but he did a pretty good job. Alright, guys. Well, it's Merlin talking about Daredevil. Let me know what you guys thought in the comment section below, and take it easy. Peace.